us about the diet of barn owls in Eastern Kentucky. She's an undergrad in the wildlife program who is just about done, ready to graduate. She's done research with all kinds of people in the department, myself included, over the summer. So without further ado, let's let Renae take it away.
Thank you. I don't know if I can share my screen or not.
Okay, I just enabled it. You should be able to now.
Okay, great. It says I can't.
I'm trying to allow it. It's not. Okay, maybe now.
Aha, yes. Okay. All right. And let me see. I figured this out last time too. Yes. All right, so you guys still just see the introduction slide, correct?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, great. All right, so who gives a hoot? Diet analysis of the barn owl, Tito alba, in southeastern Kentucky. And so Tito alba is the barn owl, and they are, along with peregrine falcons, the only birds to be a cosmopolitan species without the help of human introduction. And so why is this important? We need to understand their biology to understand how they are so great at being all over the world. You know, they choose these habitats and they thrive. So in the United States especially, farmers see them as an importance in pest management. So they hunt small rodents. These rodents can get into crop stores and ruin them with their fecal matter. And in addition, rodents, they chew on crops and their roots. And so by eating these, they are a form of pest management. So here is a distribution map. The purple is sightings and the rest of the green is just topographic. And so this is from the Cornell University. They're all about birds. And this is an eBird observation map. So for those of you familiar with iNaturalist, you take pictures and you post the location. This is kind of like the same thing. Usually during the winter, they have like 200-mile transects, and you drive these and you record what birds you see and roughly where you saw them at. This is a map from year round. So not during those counts, just whenever anyone saw a bird, this is the map. And so again, we can, you know, historically they're cosmopolitan, but you can see from 2015 to 2020, they're still thriving around the world. But we're interested in North America. So here is a map of their distribution in North America, with the light purple being all seasons, but maybe uncommon, and the dark purple being all seasons common. So pretty much they're going to be residential birds. And you can see this little white cutout that follows the Appalachian Mountains. And so potentially that could be because that is where the great horned owl makes its living, and the great horned owl can actually prey on the young of the barn owl. And so if you're a barn owl, you're not going to set up shop where you can potentially have your babies taken from you. Another reason why we see this little blank spot is because it's mostly forested, and barn owls, they're hunt in open fields where they can see. Of course, they're called barn owls, but when they aren't roosting in human man-made structures, they will roost in open tree cavities. And so there's just not really any habitat for them out there. So moving into this study, we analyzed our pellets down to the lowest taxonomic level possible. This was usually to species, And it was pretty easy to tell the species. And so right here, this is a picture of the lower jawbone and the skull of Microtus pennsylvanicus. So that is a white-footed mouse. And for our data analysis, we used a Shannon-Weiner diversity index. I wasn't going to use evenness or richness just because I didn't analyze enough specimens from each separate location. And so I didn't think that that was a good representation of the data. But this diversity index can give us a clue as to like what kind of prey these owls are eating and how many of each prey item they're eating. And we had a sample size of 60, so I analyzed 60 pellets, and I could have analyzed more. There were so many, but 60 was a good number. So what is an owl pellet, right? Owl pellets are the collection, a conglomeration of the things that the prey items that the barn owls eat that they cannot digest. So this includes fur, bones, little shells and things, and they regurgitate this through muscular contraction. And so usually they will regurgitate these when they sit on their perch for the day or night. And so if you know where a barn owl perches, then you can go and collect these. You can collect the freshest ones to get the most accurate data. So that's pretty cool. So what did we see? So at the top, on top of each one of these pictures, you'll see n equals a number, and that's the number of that specific species that we saw in the entire data set. So not per owl, not per location, just in its entirety. So we saw some meadow voles, northern short-tailed shrew, white-footed mouse, woodland jumping mouse, prairie vole, and meadow jumping mouse. And we also saw a northern cardinal and a crawfish. And I thought that was very interesting. You know, typically we just think of these guys as feeding on rodents, but since they are diurnal, meaning that they are active at dawn and dusk and also at night, they do have some overlap with these other bird species. And so it is possible for them to nab a little cardinal. And crawfish are usually nocturnal, and so that makes sense. But I'd never heard of a barn owl eating a crawfish before, so that was very interesting. All right, and so what do our stats actually look like? Here is a screenshot of my beautiful Excel file. Here we can see the scientific names under the species column of the animals I showed you on the previous slide, and the number equaling P. It was really nice that we had 99 because the diversity index uses a percentage, and so your PI is supposed to equal 1, and so it worked out really nicely statistically speaking. I'm going to skip all the stuff in the middle because it's just a lot of math and it's early. So at the end here, we see 0.861. And so what does that number mean? Well, in ecological terms, the diversity index can run from 0 to 5. And so this number, 0.861, is showing us that there's a relatively low diversity in our data collection. And so why? Potentially this could be underrepresentation of what they are actually eating. Again, my sample size was only 60 and I could have analyzed many, many more. And of course, they're locally adapted. And so it might not be that it wasn't representative. It's just that these owls are going to be eating these prey items that are typically found in the same habitat. So those crawfish are going to be in the open fields because they dig their little burrows. Cardinals, you know, typically like those open areas. You see them a lot, you know, in your backyard because that's where they like to be. And then our rodents, of course, they're going to love the fields. They have all those grains and grasses to eat. And so that could be it. Another explanation could be the time of year. So during the summer, there's vegetation everywhere. These rodents, they can hide and, you know, get away from them. And during the winter, when all that foliage and all the grass dies, they might be more exposed. And so it could be a representation of that as well. Cardinals in the winter, they stand out just like that. They're bright red. Don't know if owls can see color or not, but. And then, so what's next? Of course, we can always have a larger sample size. However, I was digging into the literature, and because they are a cosmopolitan species, there have been journal article reviews. So taking lots of data from several journal articles, looking at altitude and elevation and habitat gradient, and seeing what they eat over those gradients. And so potentially these owls that we sampled out here in southeastern Kentucky, they could be eating different things than barn owls out in the bluegrass, or, you know, for that matter, even barn owls that occur out in the western part of the United States. Of course, we're going to have a different species composition out there, but rodent-wise or crawfish-wise or bird-wise, it could be different. And so I think that that could be really interesting to look at. This was short, simple, and sweet. It's an undergrad project, and it is the last seminar of the semester. So, yep, that's pretty much it. Thank you to Dr. Elliott as my mentor on this project, Dr. Richardson, his grad student, Peter G. David in 1985 for the data collection, and of course the EKU biology department for giving me a room and a textbook to work with. Here are my sources. And if you guys have any questions, we have ample amounts of time.
Thank you, Renae. Does anyone have any questions? If you do, feel free to just go ahead and unmute yourself and speak up.
Renae, can you tell us a little bit about where the pellets came? You were actually sorting through the pellets, right?
Yes.
So Dr. Richardson had those saved from 1985 or something?
Yeah.
Oh, so this is a slice of history.
Yes.
Cool. And do you know how they were collected? Were they, how many different owls and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so there were 3 separate locations that they collected from. One was an actual barn, I believe. One was a nest cavity, and the third was someone's attic. And so they actually, like I said before, they found where these owls were roosting. And so some of them were a collection of like fresh pellets. And so some of the pellets that I analyzed still had fur and stuff. I had to pick them apart. And then others, it was just like a cup filled with skulls. So some of it had location data. Of the things that I analyzed, I did not analyze the things that had no location data. So I kind of like knew which of the 3 sites my data came from, but it was basically just going in and scooping up what they found and bagging it.
So you're probably looking at the products of 3 different individuals?
Yes.
Likely. Mm-hmm. All right. Interesting.
Hey, Renae, I have a question.
Go for it.
It's Dr. Brown. You told me the other day that you talked to Kate Slankard from Kentucky Fish and Wildlife, who's also interested in barn owls. And I'm just wondering kind of what you guys talked about and what you learned from her about barn owl populations in Kentucky.
Yeah, so I kind of handed her this data set as well to see, you know, if things were matching. And she said that that is all of what I found was basically what she was seeing in her data as well. And she sent me this really cool article that I guess she wrote based around her data. And so in that article, it was saying that barn owls are becoming less and less common in the state. And so doing this research is really important to see what they're eating and like where they potentially could move next. She said she had more pellets to give me if I wanted. And I was like, Oh, this was an undergrad project, so I'm gonna, not. But it was really cool to talk to her because she is like an avian biologist, so she's, she knows a lot of stuff. But yeah, thanks for referring me to her. She seemed really interested in this data. So.
Renae, Pat Talley here. First of all, very impressive seminar. You have a very excellent speaking style. I was highly impressed by that. Couple of questions. So it's curious. So you say, from what Kate says, that they're kind of decreasing here in Kentucky. Yet it's a very cosmopolitan species. I was very surprised by your map. They're all over the world, it seems like. So I guess two questions. What do you think contributes to their success in terms of distribution all across the world? And then what could be affecting their distribution here in Kentucky? Kind of an alternate question.
Yeah, so to answer your first question, they are very good hunters. The way that their feathers, they have like a special adaptation, the way that their feathers glide over each other is soundless pretty much. I mean, mice can hear pretty well. So for an owl, however much they weigh, seamlessly gliding through the air to catch a mouse, I mean, that's pretty impressive. So I would say that definitely their morphology has to do with how well they can colonize the entire world. I mean, they're on every continent minus Antarctica. So that's really impressive for a bird species. To answer your second question though, I think that they might be in decline. So recently, evolutionarily speaking, we have changed our farming habits. So usually, farmers would let their crops go fallow for the winter, not really dig anything up. And I think that the barn owls really thrived off of that because, there was lots of stuff for their prey to eat.
Right.
But now we've switched to a lot of pesticide use, clear the land, get it all out of there before winter comes, maybe put a crop rotation on like a bean or something. But I don't know. I think that could be a big reason why. Another reason why is we've seen like a lot of like expansion of cities, and so maybe they're being pushed further and further from their habitat. Those could be a couple of reasons why.
Makes sense. And if I could ask one more question, what are your future plans? You've done some very impressive work here, and what are your thoughts about going forward?
With barn owl research?
No, for you. What are your future professional plans?
Oh, okay. I have an SCA fire internship, pairs with AmeriCorps, and that starts January. Yes, thank you, Dr. Brown. That starts January 18th, and that's down in Alabama. And so I'm really excited for that. That's going to be around 18 weeks with the Nature Conservancy down there.
Wow.
So that'll be fun. That'll last until about May-ish, mid-April. And then after that, Dr. Richter, I believe you sent out an email earlier in the semester, Africa Wild Trails. And so I'm actually going to Africa to do some research with crocodiles and giraffes. And I'm really excited about that.
Fantastic. That's great, Renae. That's great.
I highly recommend. If anybody else can make a payment, go. It's going to be amazing.
Thank you, Renae.
Yeah.
I have a small, quick question. When you were identifying down to species with the mice, was it mostly just like dental formulas and stuff for that, or was there another thing you had to go off of for IDing those?
So there are a couple of features that I looked at. Dr. Elliott gave me this really great book. I'm sure that you guys might use it in mammalogy. Dr. Dodd probably knows what I'm talking about. It's an animal skulls book, mammals specifically, and it's got everything in there from mice to whales. So for the mice specifically, I did look at dental formula, but sometimes because the pellets were so old, like the teeth would actually like fall out of their cavity. And so, it can be kind of difficult to like piece up little tiny teeth to figure out where they go in the skull. So I used zygomatic arch and the head shape overall. There is the optical occipital, that part of the skull, that suture in the back, it's different usually for all the mice. And then there's like a nasal, it's hard to describe. Oh, here, wait. Sorry. All right, yeah. So on the skull part, the teeth, yeah. And then a little further back from that, there's like a slit. So that can be an important feature as well, because that can be longer or wider or shorter in some species. So yeah, and not all the skulls look this pretty, let me tell you. Some of them are really beat up.
Thank you.
I have a stupid question.
Ooh, ask it.
Did it smell bad?
No.
Because it was so old and dried up?
Yeah. At one point, I was thankful that I was wearing a mask, because like the fur dust would just go everywhere, and I was like, ugh.
So you guys are finding out why I work with plants again. I'm like, ew. No, this is really cool stuff though.
Thanks. Yeah, it was really fun. I never thought I'd find so much joy from looking at bones.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
I think Dr. Dodd's son has his hand raised.
Yeah, Ben has a question.
Yes.
Hi. How do owls fly?
What?
How do owls fly?
That is a very good question. They have feathers. So they use those feathers to create lift and drag. There's a couple other factors in there, I'm not quite sure, but they go like this to get off the ground.
I know from my school is that they swoop down, they grab the prey with their big sharp talons.
Yes, they do.
And that's what came out right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, here's an owl flying.
Thanks, Renae.
You're welcome.
All right. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you, Renae, for the talk. And